I'm a Salesforce fangirl and a Scrum Master, practice lead, and cross-functional team member, hence the subject of today. Now, out of interest, how many of you have heard or know about Agile? How many of you uses Agile at work? Do we have any Scrum Master or Agile coach in the audience? God, guys, you want to come here? So that's the ones you want to speak about this subject later on. So Agile has plenty of benefits, and let's not bore you with figures, but Salesforce, when they made the switch in 2006, they see increase of productivity by 38%, and they wrap up the major releases 60% faster. The CAUS report, it will tell us as well success rates, and as more complex it gets the project, the more benefits you get. So Gartner Group, there you go, is definitely benefits in there. David Rico did this massive research across a lot of different projects, and saw a lot different improvements. So from cost to schedule, productivity, quality, customer satisfaction. So this average of 25% more efficient using Agile than more traditional methods. So we got the figures. The question is how the same organization with the same product or service and the same resources can actually turn things around at this rate? Good question. So we will look at what is Agile, as is very often misunderstood, how Scrum can help us, and a tool, which is the Agile Accelerator. Now, Agile, we all have in mind what Agile may mean. Agile, really what it is a mindset. It's not about doing Agile, but it's about being Agile. Now, Agile, what it does is promotes planning, but adaptive planning, development, but evolutionary development, delivery, but early delivery, and continuous improvement. This encourages rapid and flexible response to change. So to give you some context, Agile has been around for more than 20 years. It's sort of like great-grandson from Six Sigma and Lean, and reduces deviation. So in 2001, all these really clever people with these new ways to look at projects, they came together, left all these discrepancies aside, and they say, okay, let's meet in Utah in a ski resort. They actually did some ski and eating and drinking, and mainly came up with this Agile Manifesto. Representative from Scrum, XP, Crystal, all sorts. So why do we need an alternative? Well, a century ago, we were more focused on execution rather than innovation. Life was more predictable. What are we to accomplish and how are we going to do it? Very defined modules with defined practices to execute very defined plans. Now, things change more quickly, so we need to inspect and adapt more quickly and deal with greater uncertainty. What is waterfall? I'm sure you've seen something. It's this sort of cascade of events. One thing happens after another. So you get your requirements, you wrap it up, you sort of hand over, then you get your solution, you wrap it up, you hand over, then you get your design, and so you test, and so you build and test, and then deploy. And it's this cascade of events. What's happened with this? Well, even Winston Royce, who is attributed waterfall, said in his papers proceeding, I believe in this concept, but the implementation described above is risky and invites failure. Just unfortunately, no one read so far. Why this happened is that, I should try to use a bit less. There you go. So why this happened is, this is all the stuff that we need to do, and this is when we need to get it delivered. With that sort of cascade of events, what's happened is that, so you'll start your requirements, all your docs, your solution, your design, So up to this point of time, you actually haven't started building what you need to deliver. So you stretching deliverables and key items like testing towards the end. And it causes this sort of like bombshell effect. In traditional project management, you have your three variables: your cost, your time, and your quality. At this point of time, which one do you compromise? Throw more budget in? you keep the cost and the quality you're going to deliver later on, or you actually compromise quality. So what Agile does is just brings another variable to the game, which we'll speak later, but is features. Right. So the Agile Manifesto gives us values, and values individuals and interactions over processes and tools, values that work in end product over documentation, values collaboration over renegotiation and contracts and so on, and responding to change over following a plan. While there is value on the things on the right, Agile values more the things on the left. So the manifesto gave us 12 principles. We can go quickly because there's no time through them, which is this idea of continuous delivery, welcoming change, deliver the work in software very frequent, these business people, developers working together, building teams around motivation, support, and trust, face-to-face works better. The primary measure is where our end product maintains sustainable pace of development. Yeah, we don't stretch our poor resources. Continuous focus on excellence, simplicity, so we reduce waste. Self-organizing teams deliver best results, and reflect regularly, tune and adjust to become more effective. So they're all very important. But if I was to choose one, the most important of all, I'll go for 12. And unfortunately, that's the one that gets more often missed. And why? Because it's tough. So, Scrum. How Scrum can help us. I really like this quote from Aristotle. It says that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. And Scrum is a framework that actually helps us to get into habits. How does it work? Well, yeah, it's a framework, as we said, it's a framework on how to deal with greater complexity. And with complexity, I mean, let's do an attempt of a Stacy chart. So this is things that we have close agreement, very close from agreement, things far from agreement. Here are our requirements, and here our certainty. So things really close from agreement on requirements and certainty, they simple things. We know what to accomplish and how we're going to do it. Now, these things more often done by machines or automated. The section over here is our complicated things. The very far away section here is, you don't want to get there, there is very far from agreement, is anarchy, don't get there. And what Scrum is trying to is deal with complexity, this section over here, through time boxes and feedback loops, so we get the most of uncertainty, as only learning organizations actually going to keep up with the future. Empirical process, so that is how the framework of Scrum works. So empirical process control theory is the art of the possible, and is understanding that knowledge comes primarily from sensory experience. So we're going to learn as we go. As at the beginning of the project, we know the least that we ever going to know about it. Is this idea of a product rather than a project. A project, you have a start and end date, and a product, while it's on market, it can only always get better. We were talking about features, so is this concept of minimum viable product. So what is the very minimum that you need to go to market? And what this does, well, reduces technical debt, then allows you to go to market earlier. You get feedback, so you find out what is really wanted. And what it needs is to prioritize ruthlessly. Scrum has 3 pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Whatever you do, if you're using Scrum, any question that comes through, go back, look at the pillars, and think. Is as transparency could be, are we really inspecting, are we adapting to become more efficient? Scrum on these time boxes has a sprint, 30 days by the guide. most often use 2 weeks. Very, very agile teams will do a week sprints. The teams are composed, a Scrum team is composed between 3 and 9 people, and it has sort of 3 key roles. So we have the product owner, is the what, I'm the product. I'm the ultimately responsible of return of investment. You have the Scrum Master, it's about the how, is the process, is the servant leader of the team. And then you have the development team that estimates, commits, and delivers every single sprint an incremental value of the product. Then Scrum gives us certain artifacts. So the product backlog is all stuff we may want to do. The sprint backlog is out of all the product backlog, what the team has committed to deliver on that sprint. We have the burn-down chart, which is about how much effort is left. We don't think, oh, how much we have done. The burn-down chart is how much is left to deliver what we have committed to. And definition of done, which is clarifying the gap between functionality being there and actually being able to go to market. So that obviously will depend on which product or deliverable are you working towards. But in software development is things that they are fully integrated with continuous test methods, it's been documented, and so on. We got events. So the sprint starts with the sprint planning or story time, where the team comes together, looks at the very top items of the product backlog, and decides which ones they can actually commit for the capacity on that sprint to deliver. It's a place where you normally bring some guys on so the people can break down some tasks. And the idea with tasks is not to plan what we're going to do, because any plan and estimates are wrong. We know that. It's about how they're going to collaborate and how many different ways is to achieve the same thing. You have the daily Scrum, happens every day, same time, same place. The team comes together and every individual answers 3 questions. What I have done since my last stand-up, what I'm committing to do until my next stand-up, and if I have any obstacles. And then at the end of the sprint, you have the review and retrospective. So the review is the what, is the product. Normally the product owner goes and demos. A place where stakeholders can come is open and transparent. Anybody with interest will come and see what we have committed at the beginning of the sprint, what we have what we have delivered, and we actually demo and see. It's a place where naturally new stories will emerge, because sometimes you just need to see it to realize what you actually want to. And the retrospective, which is about the how, is the process, where the team answers questions such as what has gone well this sprint, and how can we become better? It's about this self-management and ownership of their own process, so they can become more effective. And then the refinement. The refinement is not such as the Scrum Framework, but it's more often used. Backlog refinement or grooming happens middle of the sprint towards the end, and it's a place where the team have the opportunity to look at the very near future, very top items of the backlog. Do they need to be re-estimated? Do we need to break it down in more manageable pieces of work? And then all this comes very nicely together through the Scrum values, which is focus, courage, openness, commitment, and respect. Now, Scrum brings challenges to individuals and organizations. If it's not disruptive, it's probably not Scrum. Okay, so you have all your list and your teams. Now you want to capture this somewhere to be able, a tool that will help you to manage this better. From a tool, you want certain things. You want workflow, you want process support, you want reports, you want traceability, connectiveness, you want transparency, and the Agile Accelerator has it all. So Salesforce is awesome, and one of the things they're really good at leading by example. They sell Salesforce using Salesforce, they service Salesforce using Salesforce, and they actually build Salesforce using Salesforce. So the Agile Accelerator, well, how this came about, they actually use something called Grand Unified System. It's where their all product and technology hangs up from. And then in 2015, out of the plus 400 objects, they took the ones that they use the most, and then packaged it up nicely in a listing for us in the App Exchange. And we can get it for free. Yay! And with free, I mean you need a force.com license, and I expect all of you use Salesforce to work, and if not, you probably should. It's built in the Salesforce platform, which means you can extend and customize as much as you like. Works nicely in Classic and Lightning experience, and Salesforce One App. As simple as get to the listing, download the app in your sandbox first, please, of course. Go through the Getting Started guide, and they even have a support success group in the community. So time-wise, we're just going to go through quickly some of the things that you find in the Agile Accelerator. So work items, the key object. Work items is stuff to do. There's 3 types of work items: user stories and increment of value. Bags or investigations. In the sprint, the ones that you commit to the sprint, you have a sprint wall where you can see all the different stories, and you can update on the fly your points, your statuses, add new tasks, move tasks around, delete, update, and so on. Then you have your backlog. So as a product owner, I want to have my backlog organized and define, prioritize, rank, estimate it. Is you can add new panels. You can organize them by epics and themes. You have the back burner, which is any story that doesn't have a sprint allocated to it. And collaboration with Chata, of course, a place that in each one of the user stories, so the work items you can share, works really well for distributed teams. You can upload files. You actually can customize actions. I'm a big fan of quick actions. So create a subsequent user story out of a user story and things like that. You can enable email to Agile, which a response from a notification through email, it will post as Chata post. And talking with notifications, a funny story. You have 3 levels of notifications. You have bread and butter, which is basically if you are the assignee and there is any comments. You get level 2, meat and potatoes. That is about if there is any status update. And then you get the one that you get notifications for everything. And it's called the whole enchilada. They're funny, aren't they? Right, so the other thing are teams. Teams is a place where you can allocate individuals and you can give them some sort of product tags. It's the place where you define points of scale. Normally works something similar to Fibonacci sequence, so 1, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. You don't want stories as big as 21. Out of office, so it helps you to calculate your capacity. And then team dependencies, so everything is traced, connected. And the original Kanban board, everything started in the accelerator. Kanban is a Japanese word, I mean visual card or sign. Kanban as an Agile framework has 4 key items. It's about that visual of your work, limit what you have in process, focus on your flow and continuous improvement. And that's what this sort of does. You can customize the different columns and then update the different statuses. You can add on the fly, like recent view work items. And it works so well that they actually deliver in the core force.com for leads and opportunities. And with the Sprint 17, you have Kanban boards everywhere. Now back to the Agile Accelerator. So the other thing we'll talk about is about reporting. Real-time data at your fingertips, of course, because it's built in the Salesforce platform. You can do all reports that you can ever imagine. Even if you link the work items to accounts, you can have your reports by accounts or by the source of the case or whatever you can do it. Now, within the sprint, you have 3 given reports. The burn down, the one we mentioned before, which for that particular sprint, how much effort is left to do what we committed as a team. You have the capacity that, again, is to show you across the different teams, each one of the individuals, how are they assigned. And you have the velocity, which is over time you want velocity to increase. This is my developer edition. Okay, it's a great tool. It really is a great tool. But tools by themselves don't transform organizations. So if what you heard you like, I came up with my top 5 for story times, so you can read some more. Scrum Guide is the guide of Scrum Framework. wrote by Ken and Jeff Sunderland, actually just updated last year. You have Agile Project Management, really good book. It's implementations of Scrum and successes and failures as well. User stories apply, how to write a user story. Sounds simple, but in a user story, you want to cover 3 things. It's sort of like a slice of cake, and I'm going to attempt to draw a cake. Okay, right? I need to practice this. And it's 3 layers that you want to cover per every single user story. You want your database, you want your business logic, and you want your user interface. So to have very, very good user stories is key once you start delivering those items. You have the other one, Fearless Change, is great. It's a recipe book of how to introduce change into organizations. And Collective Genius is one of the recent books I read. Very good, and it talks about that empowerment of the team, that self-management, and then you get the most of the individuals. Because we were talking about execution rather than innovation. In execution, it's very clear things you can teach people to do. Machines can do them for you. But the uniqueness of an individual in our organization is invaluable. No one else can actually give an input that each one of us. So a book on that. Okay, so we got to breaking news. We're launching today. If you really like London Calling, we're attempting to do a version in a much sunnier environment. This year in Madrid, 1st of June, and the idea of Dream Ole is like move it around across Spain territory year on year. So, any questions?
How did Salesforce transform themselves? Can you use the mic? Oh, sorry. So yeah, how did Salesforce transform themselves?
Themselves?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a question we should take them through it. As far as I know, they have been going through a lot of different changes, and now they not only Scrum, but now they're using a lot of Kanban ways to look at Agile. So again, it's all about learning and relearning oneself, and whatever you do today, you're going to need to change it and accept you're going to need to change it in the future. You can make plans, but the plan is going to change. So whatever you are perfectioning today, you're just going to need to keep doing that retrospective and looking at how it's going to get better. Is this idea of like trends, are you going to base trends in what's happened in the past, or are you going to base trends on what actually is happening today or what may be happening in the future? And we all need to accept that. Like, it is good to have an idea where you're going. You have your vision for your product or whatever else, my life vision. But you need to accept that the path that you have in mind today is not going to be the same. And it is important to survive, not only as a company, but as an individual. You just need to accept we are in an environment that is always changing.
Sorry, just a quick question. Did you say that Salesforce used the product you were telling us about?
Agile Accelerator? Yeah. They use this grand unified system, this GAS system, and the accelerator is a chunk of the things that they are most often used. You can, for source code repository, you can like use the API and link it whatever you want with GitHub or whatever.
Our team uses Rally. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, so you can get rid of that and use this instead. For example. And then other items like people tracker and other things. They tools. You want certain things from the tools. I like this one a lot.
One of the things that our team lead has mentioned is that the challenge of correspondence with different teams working on the project at different touch points. Is this presumably, I think you mentioned, it links in with Chatter and... So,
yeah, you have Chatter, sort of a collaboration tool. You have the team dependencies where you can link different teams. But again, if we go back to basics, we value more individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So it's always good to go back and think, how is working for me right now? As well, Agile, you can implement Agile in many ways, but you need to think of what is my industry, what is my product, because if we're looking at more governmental agile teams, their sprints are going to be longer, and they're going to need to do pre-sprints where they look at dependencies in the future, because they're things that they can change, and their dependencies is going to take a bit longer. So you just need to be, it's a scale. In between waterfall and agile is a scale. You want to be as close as possible in your industry on the agile side of it. It's not one thing or the other. You just want to be as more agile as it is, so you are the most competitive that you can. And I think they turned me off for the time already. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm going to be here outside if you want to ask me more questions. Thank you very much.